Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to the Melissa M.A.D.E Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Melissa M.A.D.E Show. I have a special guest today. You know how they always say to find someone doing what you want to do and follow in their footsteps? Well, this young lady has really inspired me, especially with the path that she's taken since, I'm 48 years old. You guys know that. Since being 48 years old, kind of the shift that she made going into menopause and what she has done in order to regain her health back. And I was just talking to her. I'm going to give her a great introduction here in a second, but I was talking to her and I told her how important this is. So I don't want you to turn this podcast off if you're in your 30s, because I want you to understand that I remember my mom had an emergency hysterectomy in her 30s, and they took everything. This was back in the day when they just gutted her and they took everything. And she had such a horrible time trying to balance those hormones and get through that. And I wish at that time I knew what I knew now to be able to help her through that. I told Laurie, I said, a lot of moms out there probably don't even know what a podcast is. So the chances of them actually hearing this may not be that great unless you get the word out for us, but for you to be there for them. So this is for anybody from the age of, 18 all the way up to 88. You're going to get valuable information from this. So let me introduce my guest. Her name is Laurie, and she absolutely blows me away. You're about to find out why. And this is one of the few podcasts that I really want you to watch. You'll hear why in a second. But she's a coach and an author. And so when she hit menopause, it really just kind of took her into a downward spiral. She started to feel a lot of brain fog. She felt really unbalanced. And she actually gained what she calls about 50 pounds of hormonal fat gain. So she tried everything to make herself feel better. And even the things that were working in the past just kind of stopped working for her. And so it was about a 4-year struggle for her, and she stumbled across intermittent fasting. And she started fasting that very same day. I love that. You're an action taker. Her menopausal fog lifted in less than 1 week, she says, and that she had more energy than before, and she just felt like herself again. Which I know is a big fear of so many women once they start going through that change, is not being able to feel like they used to. She also lost 51 pounds in 15 months, and she's been able to keep it off for years. Now, this is the kicker. This beautiful woman is 59 years old. You're going to jaw drop when you go to her website, you go to her Instagram, or you watch this YouTube video. If you are, am I not right? She's absolutely stunning. And she's now got a thriving coaching business for women and helping them through intermittent fasting. So that's going to be one of the topics that we talk about. She's a certified health coach through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And she combines her knowledge of nutrition with deep research. I love that. And practice of time-restricted eating. She guides her clients with the dream come true that you can eat the foods that you love and enjoy the rest of your life feeling vibrantly well. Doesn't that sound wonderful? So thank you, Miss Laurie, so much for being on this podcast with me. I selfishly have been very excited about this because I'm just a couple steps behind you. I think you look younger than me, but I am a couple of steps behind you, and so excited to hear, what you've done. Obviously we learn tribulations through trials, and you went through quite a few trials before being able to figure out what it was that kind of reset your body back into feeling your best. So welcome. And I would love for you to start with just kind of, I know I gave you that long introduction, but just kind of sharing kind of the things that you went through when menopause started to hit. And because I want women to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. She's been where I have been.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, 1,000 thank yous. Well, I considered myself someone who took really good care of myself. People in my life considered me a person like Laurie Lewis takes really good care of herself. And I woke up one day when I was in my late 20s, 28, 29, and I had this thought, which was, I think this Diet Coke isn't good for me. It just seemed all of a sudden it just seemed really obvious. Like, yeah, I should stop drinking. And at that point, it was a turning point where I stopped eating sugar. I stopped eating synthetic sweeteners, any sweeteners of any kind, and really pretty much stopped eating ultra processed food. And the way that I did that for myself is I decided it's not food. It just, I don't know, it just seemed so, I had some sort of awakening, some sort of epiphany. It's like, there are all these things that are not food, and then there's other things that are food, and I'll figure out the food that actually is food, what has me feel well. And I knew at the time, I could just feel it, that we are bio-individual. There isn't one perfect right diet for everyone. And so it became a natural passion of mine to study nutrition and figure out for myself what foods make me feel great and what foods don't. And so then, after many years of enjoying that kind of personal research, that's when I did go to IIN and got my health coach certification only for fun. Never did I imagine that the path of life would lead me to supporting people in feeling vibrantly well, and mostly people who you would categorize as older. If some people are listening who are in their 20s and 30s, we in our 40s and 50s and beyond are older.
Yeah.
And so I heard a hormone authority say on a podcast once, it was a few years ago, she said that people who take good care of themselves in their 30s and 40s don't have a difficult menopause. And I literally jumped out of my skin. I think I just screamed at the top of my lungs because I could check every box. If you go online or look at a book on perimenopause and menopause, and they have a long list of symptoms and things that women experience, I checked all the boxes. And I was taking really good care of myself. So there's no rhyme or reason what a woman's experience will be when she is in her mid to late 40s and goes. And so for people who don't know, you're premenopausal before the change starts. When things start changing, which you might not recognize, that's called perimenopause. And there's a moment in time when your period stops and a year goes by, that boom, there's a moment when you're in menopause and then you're postmenopausal. Ta-da.
Hmm.
And when we're young, somehow we think that we are the one who's going to avoid all of that. And
See.
so I don't want to put fear in anyone. What I want to do is empower people that menopause is something that we don't talk about. And I don't know why we don't. And it's like, men know women. Every man I know knows women and knows women in her 40s and 50s and beyond. And it's really in all of our best interest to know what's happening and going to happen with our own bodies and the bodies of those around us, and to celebrate this amazing transition for the next 50 years of my life. And for me, this is an opportunity to care for myself in ways that I never imagined. It's time to really take good care of myself. And so, what I discovered, as you introduced, is the idea of fasting clean, of fasting every day and eating in an eating window as the foundation for my health regimen. If I care about fitness, I care about food choices, I care about meditation, I care about my work performance, everything I care about gets better when I'm a person who fasts every day and eats in an eating window. Everything's better. So it's really fun to talk about.
It really is. Just today, I was listening to a YouTube video, and a doctor was talking about obviously circadian rhythm and, how we have that internal clock and how fasting is such a great benefit for our circadian rhythm because it kind of forces us to eat more in the daylight hours. Now, not always. Some people, will eat later in the day and then into the evening. But studies showing that, when you do eat earlier in the day, it helps with everything from better blood pressure to better glucose and insulin control and all of that stuff. So when you fast, do you mix it up? Are you pretty regimented with your time frame? How do you incorporate fasting or time restricted feeding in your life right now?
I think it is so wonderful to be able to mix it up. Now, my general day-to-day life, I tend to push my eating window later because I find that I'm more focused and energized and productive before I eat. When I'm in a fasted state and my body's burning body fat for fuel, I'm just riding high. And so eating kind of can feel like a lull. And then I have to put my attention on eating. And I'd
Okay.
rather wait until later to do that. But what's so amazing about it is that each individual person can discover for themselves which eating window length, which how much time you'd like to have your eating window and when you'd like it. And even if you establish your sweet spot, it can change. And I think that sleep, the sleep experts say that we do much better when we go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day. But fasting's different. And you can move it around. You kind of keep your body guessing is great. It's a great way to live. It's totally flexible. Have you found that too?
Yeah, and I agree with that because I mean, if you think about it, even exercise, if you were to do the exact same exercise every single day for 20
Yeah.
years, your body's just going to kind of get used to it and not really get optimized from it. And I do believe that with fasting as well. I had always lived by what I call the 11-7 rule, where I would eat from 11 to 7 and I would sleep from 11 to 7. And I I'm turning into that Denny's woman because even tonight I told my assistant, I said, I want to take you out to dinner. I said, but can we go early? And I said, I'm not talking about 4 o'clock early. I'm not that old yet. I said, but I would love to eat around 5 o'clock. And I'm just naturally finding myself shifting my time a little bit earlier because I am going to bed earlier. I'm becoming that old lady that's in bed by 9 p.m. where it used to be 11. So now I just try to eat a little bit sooner because I know you would agree with me that one of the worst things you can do is to go to bed on a full belly. It's just, it's so disruptive of your sleep and it's better to not have, to be digesting a bunch of food as you go to lay down for the next 8 hours. So that's really where I'm at right now.
Well, it is funny that as we age, we kind of discover that we're becoming a cliche or a stereotype. But the motivation is to feel well. Like
Right.
everybody, no matter what their age is, it's like, people are dragging through life right now. And so, no matter what your priorities are, I think somewhere people are just like, oh my gosh, I want to feel better. And people slam a Red Bull or something. Well, there comes a point where that is ineffective and it's very short lived. And the crash that follows is no fun at all. And then putting all those synthetic ingredients in it, it's just no good, right? At
No,
some point, we wake up and go, yeah, this is not good for me. And it's that self realization that, eating dinner earlier, I feel better. Going to sleep earlier, I feel better. So when we can make our life choices, day to day, moment to moment choices based on what's going to have me feel amazing, that's a great context and a great way to be making good decisions for ourselves. And so I'm very focused on that. And I think that people, as we age, that becomes a higher priority because
mm,
we don't. I'm just not going to succumb to the idea that it's all downhill from here. And as a result now of intermittent fasting for 5 years, as you said, I took the weight off in 15 months, which is a slow, methodical weight loss, but it's a miracle. I've kept it off. And when people continue their intermittent fasting regimen, this isn't a diet that the minute you hit the number, you just go back to how you lived before and gain it all
right.
back and more. This is a timing. And I eat foods that I love, but I also eat foods that love me back. So people think,
Mhm.
oh, you can eat whatever you want. Well, You can, but maybe your body doesn't want you to. So you and your body, like you're two separate things. Your consciousness, whatever you is, that is you making choices, and your body can choose when you eat and what you eat. And I don't know, as I get older, it just gets a lot easier to say, I'm making this choice because this choice has me feel better.
And I do think that's, here we go again. It's the, the wise old woman, telling her young predecessors that when you're younger, you don't really feel so much the effects of, foods that don't nourish your body. But as you do get older, you notice that kind of a thing much quicker. You notice the excess caffeine or the excess sugar, or, it could even be, if you're sensitive to gluten or dairy, that you just notice that, and it's just a little bit harder to get through when you talk about eating. And I know it's not, you don't really like do the whole diet thing. I'd love for you to talk about that, but like, what does your kitchen look like? What does your refrigerator look like? What does a day in the life of you look like? Which I always say is, I love how you said in the beginning, bio individual. The way that Lori eats is not going to be perfect for you, but she's figuring out through trial and error and education and research what is, helping her look and feel her best. And she looks really good.
You.
But what is it?
Oh.
What does that kitchen look like, girl?
Well, my fridge is empty. So I lived in New York for 25 years, and I don't enjoy cooking. I do not enjoy food preparation. And
Okay.
so I really do like deciding at the spur of the moment what I'm going to be eating. But as an intermittent faster, and I coach my people this way, we really want nutritious, like just some staples on hand that at a moment's notice when we need to eat, we have nourishing food at hand. But
Mhm.
the thing is that I think most people consider themselves somewhat rebellious and that they don't want to be told what to do. People are like, I want to make my own choices. Except when it comes to food, people don't make their own choices. They're searching for this holy grail of being told, what am I allowed to eat? What am I not allowed to eat? Like there's some magical list in the sky somewhere that someday I'm going to figure out the exact perfect list. Well, that quest is looking for something outside of you. And all of my coaching is every decision that we need to make regarding our health and our wellness is we're looking inward. So this is
Mhm.
why, I love working with people for a year or more, because that mental cognitive mindset emotion transition takes a lot of time to change habits and change mindset. And so when people ask what to eat, we start looking at, what are you already eating? I start categorizing
Okay.
it in terms of, what are your trigger foods? What sets you off down a slippery slope? Some people very badly. What are the foods that make you not feel well? And most people are like, I don't know. What do you mean not feel well? Oh, puffy, achy, moody, sleepy, all of the seven dwarfs, and not feel well. So then we notice that. And then, what are your grab and go? I'm exhausted. I can't even think about preparing anything. I'm in a rush foods. And then the fourth column is the foods that you love, that love you back. That when you eat that meal, you are so satisfied. It's just so delicious and you feel great. And then we just keep adding. So you asked what my foods are. No, people say, what do you eat? I'm like, you don't want to eat like me, like I do. You really don't. People love cashews. Well, I can't eat them. They make me, I just double over in so much stomach discomfort when I eat cashews. People are like, uh-oh, Laurie Lewis doesn't eat cashews. Maybe I shouldn't. No, you should eat them.
So
I don't
yummy.
eat black beans. I don't eat quinoa. And people are like, what's wrong with that? How come she doesn't eat that? Because it makes me feel bad. So, but other people are like, oh, black beans are the only beans I can eat. Great, do that. So it's really a fun discovery of what each individual's body responds well to. But the beauty of being an intermittent faster is, when you've been fasting clean, so plain water, plain unflavored everything, water, black tea, black coffee, um, and eating in an eating window, this phenomenon, that phrase, Dr. Bert Herring coined the idea of appetite correction, that our brain has an appestat, an appetite center and that regulates our hormones for satiety and hunger. And we're like a wild animal. Our body can tell us when it actually really is hungry and what to eat and how much to eat, but it's just switched off because we've been eating ultra processed food and we eat all the time from the minute we wake up. People are like, oh, I don't eat till 1. It's like, but yeah, but you're drinking lemon water and cream in your coffee and stevia. And it's like that got the digestion and the insulin rise going. So when we can fast and put our body into that condition of full repair, we can then discern the communication that our body's actually giving us in terms of the foods that fuel us well. So when people say to me, can I open my eating window with an apple and peanut butter? I'm like, I don't know, let's test it out.
I love that.
How do you feel?
Yeah.
So that's a long answer to what do I eat? I'm not telling.
Yeah, no, and I really respect that, but I do have to ask you, so out of your 4 columns or that you were talking
Mhm.
about, the 4th one was, what is the one thing that you absolutely love that makes you feel wonderful? I would love to know what that is for you.
I love dark leafy greens. I know
Do
it
you?
sounds insane. I love mushrooms, but so I crave because of this experiment when I was in my late 20s about I stopped eating all sweetness.
Mm,
And I think that because I enjoy bitter flavors, now any sweetness tastes really, I can't. And it also makes me not feel well. Sugar makes me feel incredibly not well. So if people are like, what do you mean you're not having any wedding cake? I'm like, it looks, I can appreciate it by looking at it. And they're like, oh, you're trying to be good. I'm not trying to be good. This is not a diet. I don't have to be, there's not things that those foods are bad. And if I eat them, I'm bad. No, 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 no. That makes me not feel well. And if it looks really good, like then I might eat it and pay the price.
right.
So
Yep.
I love kale and arugula and dandelion green. I love all the dark herbs and greens.
I always
I'm a
tell my
weirdo.
clients how important it is for us to get that love of bitter back. And
Mm,
especially when people come to me and they're like, I can't do black coffee, it's too bitter. And I'm like, well, that's exactly why you need to drink it. Number one, why are you drinking coffee if it tastes like cream? You're not enjoying coffee for the taste of coffee. You might as well just drink milk. But number two, you've lost that wonderful taste of bitter that really helps balance out your satiety. You know, if you have all of these different flavorings and not just mostly salty and sweet, then your body will just absolutely crave those two. If you give it that huge variety, then it will crave that huge variety,
crave.
just like you said.
Yes. Yes, I do. I love my greens.
I love that. I
You
love
know,
that.
and the thing about people saying that they don't like black coffee is that our taste buds regenerate every 2 weeks. So in 2
Mhm.
weeks, you have new ones. So
Right.
if you just,
Endure.
buckle down and endure, exactly, I love that word, for 2
Mhm.
weeks, have a little, there are a lot of ways you can shoot it back an espresso or really water it down or put it on ice or lots of ways. Your taste buds won't think it's so bad in a few weeks when you have all new taste buds.
Right. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. It took me a little while, but now I can't go back. It's my absolute favorite
Mm.
beverage in the morning. So Lori, I want to shift gears a little bit and let's talk about some of the hype out there
Oh
about
my
intermittent fasting.
goodness.
So we hear you and I talked about this, how we hear this a lot, but also our clients and our friends and our family also hear um, things like intermittent fasting isn't good for women and intermittent fasting doesn't work. So can you just kind of highlight obviously your experience is different, but the research that you found and sometimes why you might hear these kind of pieces of advice. There's kind of always an agenda behind it. And your take on that.
Well, most people come to intermittent fasting for weight loss because it's
Yes.
lumped into this diet category. So people think of it as a possible optional way to diet and to lose weight. That's valid. Me too. I gained 50 pounds. Like when I turned 49 and my period stopped and I went into menopause, I gained 50 pounds. And I didn't want to be carrying that around. And I also had all the other menopausal symptoms, which I was just aching head to toe and brain fog and memory loss and all of it. So I really wanted to feel better and I really wanted to lose that weight. So the thing about intermittent fasting not working is that when people are weight loss resistant, first of all, we have to figure out the customized eating window for you. And it is for sure guaranteed that when you fast clean and you pause from eating, and you do it every day, you can't stop and start and stop and start because we want to become fat adapted. We want to flip that metabolic switch. So we use the food we just ate and the glucose in our blood and the stored glucose, which is called glycogen, and then we flip into fat burning. And if you intermittent fast every day you're waking up around 12, 13 hours fasted and your body's shifting into fat burning. And so, and then at 16 hours, it ramps up even more. And some people love fasting longer than 18 hours, and it really ramps up after 18. So every single person is improving their health, their brain health, inflammation, like head to toe, everything, gut, liver, all of it. When you deliberately, consciously pause from eating, fast, clean, and eat in an eating window. But if the body is not shedding weight and you're not getting smaller, there's some other pathology there that needs to be healed. And so people are like, screw this intermittent fasting. I'm going to do some other diet. It's like, well, first of all, most people feel so much better intermittent fasting. Second of all, when did those diets ever work? And if they did work, people are like, well, I lost 40 pounds and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but where are you now? So I encourage people to keep going with the discovery and the enjoyment of intermittent fasting because your body is healing. And at some point, it's either your liver, your gut, insulin, other hormones, chronically high stress and cortisol, your thyroid. There are a lot of reasons that are causing weight loss resistance for people, drinking a lot of alcohol, eating too much sugar. I mean, I know this isn't a diet, but there are foods that we consume that many people's bodies will hold on to weight when they're consuming that. So we need to discover that. Okay. So what if people say intermittent fasting doesn't work? I'd love to define what work is because it's kind of like sleep. We can't, it's not optional. It's just we didn't know that about fasting. So the deep healing that's happening every day, we want to get excited about that. Then regarding women and hormones, I mean, so, if people read the obesity code and the diabetes code by Dr. Jason Fung and Fast Feast Repeat by Jen Stevens and lots of other wonderful books about intermittent fasting, we understand the physiology. Losing weight is not a calories in, calories out game that we've been duped for 70 years to believe that it's all made up. Weight loss is really a hormonal issue. And so when we pause from eating every day, we are balancing those over 80 hormones that we have that are most likely totally out of whack right now. And so does that mean people can overeat? No, it doesn't mean eat too much, but we don't have to measure and count and follow a calorie tracker and points and macros. We don't have to. Some people still like to do that. If people like to do that, I don't know. I think it's freeing to not have to count our food and to be able to focus on foods that make us feel really well,
Right.
that we love. So it works. I
Yeah.
know based on the thousands of people I've coached, including myself, so people have lost 5 pounds and ward off Alzheimer's and keep fasting because they don't want to have dementia like their parents and grandparents. And other people, have lost 150, 200 pounds and have a whole new lease on life. So it's not about the weight loss, but when people want to feel better, an indicator or indication of longevity is whether or not you can sit on the floor and stand back up without using your hands. And most people over 50 can't get on the floor and get back up using a whole couch to prop them up. So
Wow.
we're in not great shape as a people. So it's not about obesity and having a judgment about how much people weigh. I want people to live longer and I want people to feel really good today. So
Mhm.
that's my, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I have to say about hormones and whether or not intermittent fasting works, because it does, and it does, it does.
It does, and I guess it's all relative. I think people want to believe that if they, because I get this concern, not even a concern, but this, they're disgruntled a lot from people that follow me. Like I've been intermittent fasting for a month and I haven't lost any weight, and that's where they leave.
Oh,
I mean,
oh.
just the idea of fasting should induce weight loss, and I love how you just shared that's number one. If you really think of, I love how you equated it to sleep. If you just think about it, how it is a time of healing, just like sleep is, and it's just so good for the body for so many countless reasons. Number one, it's going to reduce a lot of stress, and stress is another thing you
Yes.
need to release in order to lose weight. Don't stress about intermittent fasting and stuff, and really just look toward the sleeping and the hydration and the eating well, getting outside and all that stuff. And you
Mm,
will find that intermittent fasting is a lifestyle that really helps you adhere to honestly eating more within your more of a calorie balance. I only say that because
mm.
even for me, if when I was younger and I would eat, my mom, love her. I don't even know if she listens to my podcast. Mom, I love you if you listen
Hi,
to it.
Mom.
Hi, Mom. She was a wonderful mother, going to school full time to get her master's degree in special
Mm,
education. She would always make us breakfast. And I remember not really, because I've started accidentally intermittent fasting because I wasn't interested in breakfast as an adult. So as soon as I got out of the house, I just quit eating breakfast. But I remember eating it, not necessarily feeling hungry, but that would trigger hunger for me throughout the rest of the day,
that's
and
right.
I was a kid. And I would eat until late in the night. And so it was just calorie processed food too as a teenager, but calorie overload because I was eating from, literally 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. every single night. And that was just such an opportunity to consume so many calories. Where for me, again, when it comes to helping balancing my weight, not only do I eat very healthy and do try to do all the right things, but that window has really helped me stay within a reasonable range. I'm just like you. I don't, unless I'm trying to do an experiment, I don't calorie count. I don't macro count down to the gram. I have parameters, but it's honestly the intermittent fasting that I think is the one thing that really helps keep my health in check. And then I can, go to the types of food that I eat, and then I can go to how much food I eat. But I really do believe that it's the accidental intermittent fasting for over 25 years that has kept me. And Flora, you may not know my story, my followers do, but this started I used to hide it because I was in the fitness industry, and I would read all the fitness magazines that would tell you to eat those 6 meals a day and to wake up first thing in the morning to stoke that metabolism, and breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And it could be 100% carbohydrates. Have your pancakes. And I was so scared to ever reveal the fact that I exercised on an empty stomach, because I taught group exercise first thing in the morning, and I felt so much better without all that food in my stomach. And it wouldn't be until I got home several hours later that I would eat. And that just worked so good for me. But man, I wouldn't speak of it. It wasn't, I mean, we're probably going on 10 years now that I've been talking about it. But for, 15 years before that, I felt like I was doing something wrong because
I
of,
used to be a runner and run a lot and run marathons, and I never told anyone that I didn't eat before I ran, because when I tried to, my run was ineffective and I didn't feel well. I didn't, and now we know, there's a guy who recently ran 100 miles in Utah at elevation,
wow.
totally fasted. And to prove that it wasn't a fluke, he did it again. And so, and so we don't need all that pre-workout BCAAs, post-workout. We have fuel on our bodies, the glycogen in our livers and our muscles, the fat on our bodies. Even if we're at our ideal weight and ideal body fat, we have fat. We're not going to run out. And so to be exercising in a fasted state is really exhilarating. And I love what you said about people saying, I've been at this for a month. And I haven't lost any weight. Well, that's the adaptation phase. That's the adjustment time when your body is learning to be a fat burner instead of a sugar burner. And so
Yeah.
I tell people that to ease in gradually, to start with 12-12. So they're 24 hours in a day, chop it in two. So you do 16-8, you have an 8-hour eating window from 11 to 7. And, but I like people to ease into that. And then over that first month, I really encourage people to weigh in the beginning and then put the scale away. They're like, I can't, because people look to the scale. You look to that external communication, that number, to tell you how you're doing. It doesn't tell you how you're doing. Your body is in repair. And mostly people feel a lot better within the first week. And they're like, I'm feeling great. I'm sleeping well. My digestion is good. And then they look at that number and they're like, it's not working. It's like, it is working. It's working. And then the other thing you said about stress and cortisol is that if people, I think about women and fasting where they say, women's hormones, it's that this isn't a competition. This isn't the fasting Olympics. And if people push too hard and compare themselves to others, yeah, that's stressful. But if it's a gentle, peaceful, personalized, healthful, inspiring, uplifting, daily fasting practice, there's nothing about that that's stressful at all. Exercise raises cortisol. Okay,
Mhm.
there's a moment maybe when you experience a hunger wave at around 16 hours and your body's like, oh, I'd like you to eat now. And you're like, nope. And you drink some water, pop a magnesium capsule and fast on, and you feel great 20
Yep.
minutes later. Maybe you had a little uptick of cortisol, but it goes back down. So cortisol isn't an enemy. We just don't want it up all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you want to wake up every day, you need some cortisol in your life.
That's right. I need some cortisol in my life. And
Yeah.
the other thing you said about stoking the metabolism really cracks me up, because that is such a medical mythology that if we eat constantly, if we eat 6 times a day, it's medical mythology and it's food company marketing, but
Yes.
eat, eat, stoke your metabolism. Your metabolism will never be fast enough to outrun the amount of food that you're eating. So is it true that eating raises your metabolism? Yes, but you're not raising it enough to deal with all that food you're eating. And the way we know is because we have, a high percentage of people overweight and obese and type 2 diabetes and metabolic disorders. So yeah, that's stoking the metabolism. Chalk that up for such a disservice to humanity.
It really is. And I still see it on billboards today. McDonald's has one just down the street from me, a big old billboard about, their breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day, especially McDonald's.
That was invented by Kellogg's.
Yes,
Breakfast is, oh,
such an interesting
people.
story.
Mhm, mhm.
Mr. Kellogg. I've always been fit. I remember in college, I had my body fat test. I had my body fat done and it was like 13 or 14. It was pretty, pretty healthy, low for a young woman.
Yeah,
And there wasn't don't hate me. There wasn't a huge amount of effort to get there. I just loved to exercise and I ate well, but I was intermittently fasting, even not knowing what it was back then. Then I had 2 babies and a little bit of weight came back on. But then I got it all off and I've been able to maintain still at 48. I should go get it done soon. It's been a hot minute because of the pandemic, but anywhere from, I would say, let's just say 15 to in the 17s, still been able to manage that.
amazing.
Well, thank you. And I really, and I don't have, like you see some competitors who hold a great low body fat, but they have an on and off season. I've always had it. I've always had defined abdominals, always my whole life, unless I was carrying an 8-pound baby. But what I'm learning, in my many years of research and studying and schooling as well, is it's not just the amount of food I'm eating. It's not just the macronutrients that I'm eating. It's not the amount of exercise or the diversity of the exercise in and of itself. It is, and I'm taking us back to something you mentioned was metabolic flexibility, because I think that is so key. I know that they are estimating that by 2030, 50% of Americans will be obese. And we are hearing now constantly about prioritizing protein. And I know that's not, protein is essential and so important. But again, just like you said, sometimes we tend to take things too far. We're going to take protein too far, just like we took fat too far and we took carbohydrates too far. We just tend to, when we hear something is good, we overdo it greatly. And so I just want to stress to you guys, protein is a priority, but the underlining message there is that carbohydrates, the processed and refined carbohydrates that we're eating today, the diet that is standard American diet that is so high in carbohydrates makes it very low in fat, which isn't good for us, and low in protein, which is not good for us. And I've always been good at balancing that and allowing my body to be able to jump from burning the glucose to burning ketones. And we need our body to produce ketones. Ketones are so good, especially for the brain. And when you intermittently raise your ketone levels, not constantly, I'm not telling you to be in a constant state of ketosis, but through intermittent fasting, when you allow your body to raise those ketones, you are allowing your body to really learn how to switch, like you said, from burning the sugar to burning the fat. And I, from the pit of my stomach, think that is the key to everything. And it's not something we really understood until recently. And it's just something that really needs to be studied more, talked about more, and utilized more, is being able to switch from those two things. Which is what I would love for you to speak on this, especially when you get older, which is what causes the tiredness and the brain fog and the ridiculous cravings, because we're not able to do that switching. We just stay in one state, which makes our body panic and think that I can't get into that fat burning mode, so I need that sugar. So can you just highlight a little bit more, in your expertise with working with clients and research, the metabolic flexibility, especially for women and for older women?
Oh, well, it starts with insulin. And so when I was envious and remembering a bit when you said you've always had your flat tummy and your abs are in good shape, that I did too. I always felt like that was my top feature, my flat stomach. And then suddenly when I went into menopause, I'm like, what is this? I can like grab my stomach. What the heck? Like, at least like give me my flat stomach back. And it's a challenge of an imbalance of insulin, cortisol, and estrogen for the most part. And so to get those back into balance, we really do need to pause from eating and to use through those fuel sources. So of course our body is smart. Of course it's going to ask for food. It remembers you ate 2 hours ago. It's used that up, or it knows, let's say I opened my eating window early yesterday at noon, and today at noon, my body's going to like tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, hello, you ate at this time yesterday. It's so smart. And so it would prefer, because it's easier, that I feed it. It's easier than shifting fuel sources, but the body knows how. And so that's this adaptation phase and the adjustment phase when you become a new intermittent faster, is we've got to allow the body to learn to tap into all the available fuel sources. And then people are like, isn't it gonna eat up my muscle? And Dr. Jason Fung says, the body is not that stupid. It's
Yeah.
not gonna it's not going to use muscle when it has all this fat.
Yes.
So even experienced intermittent fasters need to remember that. So I had a client this morning. She said, I woke up at 6:30 this morning. I was so hungry. I'm like, okay, when did you close your window yesterday? And she said, 7. I'm like, okay, so 12, you can fully expect that around 12 or 13 hours fasted, your body's going to ask, you're going to have thought of food. It's going to give a little tummy grumble. It's going to be like, remember, don't forget to eat. And then you keep fasting because you're metabolically flexible and keeping insulin low. Insulin's not only a blood sugar regulating hormone, it's a fat storage hormone. And every time we take in flavors, sweetness or food flavors or nutrients, it rises. We want it to calm down for a long amount of time. and tap into burning our fat for fuel. And like you said, when we're using those ketones, the fat goes to the liver and transforms into ketone bodies. You can just think we're warding off Alzheimer's and warding off dementia. And so insulinemia is one of the factors for some of these diseases that hit us later in life. And you said too that when younger people are eating a lot of ultra processed foods, they don't see the immediate ramifications. But 20 years later, a lot of women going through menopause, that's at that time when health issues, autoimmune and so forth, can really rear its head strongly because the body just can't take it anymore. It's like I'm going through this huge hormonal shift and we've been abused for 20 years and it can't take it anymore. So that when I say abused, I really mean stress also. So as I said earlier, I was someone who considered myself that I took really good care of myself, but I also had a high level of stress. I ate dinner really, really late. I lived in New York City. I worked, 80 hours a week. I drank a ton of coffee, and I didn't realize how I was really taxing my body. And so, yeah.
That's you talking about when you're younger and you're eating, and maybe it's because it just becomes the new norm for you that the food, by chance, and that the way that you're eating just slowly makes you feel a little less better than your best. And it's so gradual that you really don't even notice it. And I just equate it to because I would slather baby oil all over myself in my teens and lay out in the sun for hours on end. In my 20s and 30s, I lived in a tanning bed. In fact, my girlfriend's mom owned one. And this kills me to even say this out loud. She would put me in it, it would turn off, and she'd run in the room and turn it on again. And I would sit in it for twice as long as I should have. And so it wasn't until my mid 30s that I'm like, oh, and basal cell started just showing up all over my body. And I'm like, oh, I got to take care of my skin. So here I am now, 48, and I'm still dealing with it. But it's not because of what I'm doing today or even 5 years ago. It's what I've done 20 years ago that my body is now saying I can't do it anymore. I've tried to defend and ward off, these cancerous cells. I just can't do it anymore. And I'm paying the ramifications for the lack of skincare. So for my young folks out there, think about that. Every once in a while, that cupcake is absolutely worth eating. But most of the time, look at it and ask yourself, is this nourishing me? Is this, helping me with my goals? And I bet you if you really just, instead of just being reactive and go, oh, that looks good, and eat it, just to really think about it for a second. Is this, put Melissa's voice in your head.
Yes.
Where do I want to be, 25 years from now? Do I want to be the person that runs circles around my friends with so much energy and vibrance? Or do I want to be, the statistic of not being able to, sit up from, I'm going to try that, Laurie. As soon as we get off, I'm going to try to see if I can get off the
Okay, there's
floor
a
with
video on YouTube from the BBC.
Okay.
And what you do is you stand up straight and you cross your ankles.
Okay.
And then you sit down. And so
Okay.
then you're kind of sitting cross-legged and you stand back up without using your hands.
Okay.
And it's amazing. And I want to say though, Melissa, is it's we're not all doom and gloom. Like it's not all lost, right? So if someone didn't take care of themselves in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond, the amazing thing about intermittent fasting is it truly, I know people are like, okay, this is nonsense. She's sounding too good to be true. But it is like the fountain of youth in that when you especially fast longer than 18 hours, right? If you can get into an 18-6 schedule or 19-5 and eat 2 meals in a 5-hour eating window, it's delicious, yum. The phenomenon called autophagy, which of course digs into our cells and cleans them out. It's like taking your old dirty dusty car with all the cups and stuff in the back to be detailed, and they give you your car back. It's like, oh my God, it's all shiny and new. It's amazing. I can't even tell the difference between a brand new car and the new car lot in my amazing car. That's what it's like in our cells. So we actually can fully repair. So they takes out all the broken parts and reuses So if you're an intermittent faster, one of the things that you don't have to worry about as much is protein, because each cell is taking out the old junky proteins and recycling them. So I have clients who have been diagnosed with macular degeneration and their eyes are getting better. People with gum disease, it's getting better. People with osteoporosis and osteopenia, their bone density is improving because of intermittent fasting and the human growth hormone production that ramps up when you're in a fasted state. So I don't want people to get so motivated that they're like over fasting and going overboard and stressing themselves out. But I do want people to feel confident and enthusiastic and really certain to know that you're such an amazing person to make this choice to be an intermittent faster, because you are healing your own body. Liver enzymes, fatty liver, gut issues, type 2 diabetes, like it's all reversible 100%. Like, and I
Yeah.
know that's a big guarantee, but I don't know one client who hasn't brought their A1C down and gotten off their metformin. And so
There are some tremendous success stories, and I
Mm.
totally agree with you on all of that. So for me, because in my podcast, I want to make sure I get all the best advice from you. My last big question for you is, like I said, 48 years old. I don't know if I'm in perimenopause, which it makes me think I don't think I am, because like my Aura ring asked me, sorry, gentlemen, if any gentleman's
I
listening,
They
girl talk.
no, they can hear it. They can hear it. Men do not need to run away from this conversation. It's like as normal as saying you have an itch on your elbow. I mean, come on. Okay, talk about
Okay.
it.
Listen to me, gentlemen.
Yeah.
My Aura ring asked me, is your period starting today? And I was like, nope. And then 3 hours later it started, and I was like, dang, which means I'm pretty regular. And obviously
Mhm.
this little piece of wearable is pretty cool. But I've been, there's maybe been one or two in the last year that were just a little off, but nothing. So I don't know if I'm in perimenopause, but I'm 48. And I know you mentioned in 49, you started perimenopause, and that's when the weight gain started to happen. And I know this was before, you finding intermittent fasting and stuff, but for someone like me, I know I have a lot of listeners that are probably in the same phase right now. How can you help us really ease as much as we can through perimenopause and postmenopause?
So I really think it's time to do a few things. I think it's time to look at alcohol consumption, sugar consumption, and caffeine consumption. Okay. So I don't demonize any of those things. I just know that those things do not serve us as we're going through this transition. So can you have a glass of wine? Sure. But this wine culture of my wine, just take a look, everybody just take a look. And so even if people out there are like, well, I'm not a drinker. Okay, how much sugar are you eating? How many cups of coffee are you drinking? Okay, so all three of those things, people are like, everything in moderation. Okay, well, what does that even mean? So really tune in and look for yourself. No judgment. Is that working for you? And could one cup of coffee serve you, and to switch to something else? All right. So take a look at that. The other thing is to talk to your friends, talk to women who are older than you. Um, there's a great book called Perimenopause Power. A woman in England called Maisie Hill wrote, and just familiarize yourself with what the heck is happening. There's another book, I can't remember the name of the author, called What the Fresh Hell. That's about menopause. Like, okay.
Love
So we
that.
don't need to fear monger, and people don't need to be afraid, but it's important and it's not shameful. Our body's going through a hormonal shift. We have the rest of our lives to take amazing care of ourselves. So to recognize what some of the symptoms are is important. So perimenopause started for me around age 44. I went into menopause at 49. That's early. The average is around 52. So, and perimenopause can last 3 years to 10 years, approximately, give or take. And so to know some of the symptoms and be able to connect the dots. So I went through a phase where I I just was immobilized a lot. I wasn't as productive. And my brother said, well, it sounds like depression. And isn't
Oh,
depression like part of menopause? And I'm like, I don't know, is it? So, so
no.
there are these things that we just kind of need to, it's not like a label that you need to expect, oh, all these awful
Right,
things are going
right.
to happen to me, but the awareness and the sharing and not having it be shameful. And women get so exasperated and feel so strange when our hormones are shifting. We don't feel like ourselves. And a lot of women in menopause, and it kind of becomes a joke, which is awful, that we get grumpy and kind of mean and testy.
Yeah.
And that is hormonal. Now, it's not letting everybody off the hook saying you can just be a raving lunatic, but then we go to our doctors and our doctors prescribe antidepressants. And it's like, okay, there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with antidepressants, but that's not going to solve this. So
Right.
take gentle care of yourself. I think younger women have a hard time, that's the age of like power yoga. Okay, maybe now it's a time for restorative yoga. There's nothing wrong with hugging a pillow for an hour. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
so
good.
the things that will make the biggest difference during this transition and in the future is to learn to take very gentle care of yourself. And it doesn't mean you care less just because you're not aggressive about it. So I think that's the shift, is the gentleness and
I
being
love
really,
that.
yeah.
And, I got something that might blow your mind a little bit.
Oh, good.
So I the beginning of the well, shoot, for the last several months, let's just be honest, Melissa, I'm not never been a big drinker. I mean, I could go a home, I just never big drinker. But I have a friend, and those of you that follow me, you know what friend I'm talking about. He doesn't listen to my podcast, but he's a really close friend, and he loves to social drink. And I just started social drinking like crazy. And my Aura ring, I love it, and I look at it every single morning, and my resting heart rate uh, was at a pretty high rate. And I haven't drank now for about a month, not a single drink, and it has dropped 15 beats per minute at night
Right.
because I took alcohol out. Talk about disrupting sleep. And I would never drink to the point of even being tipsy. It was just social drinking, one, two, maybe three, but quite often. So it was mind blowing to me when I stopped drinking to watch that resting heart rate. 15 beats a minute is a lot. And
Yes.
my heart was working so hard while I was sleeping, and that's not good for anybody. So those are the kind of cues that you're talking about, and to, to body check and to just really pay attention to things that are different, good and bad,
You
with what
might
you're doing.
you might notice on your Aura ring also that a few drinks can affect your deep sleep. And
Yes.
that, if we're staying up later, deep sleep really happens, which is like the scrubbing, the cleaning of the brain. And when the body's focusing on digestion and is distracted by the alcohol, it's not getting into that deep sleep, which happens in the early part of the night and that we rob ourselves of.
Yeah.
So yeah, that deep sleep is
So
delicious.
important.
And yeah, that's the first number I look at on my Aura ring when I wake up in the morning. It's
Okay, I'm
like,
gonna start
how
really
many?
paying attention to that. I really, yeah, I always say that they should do a sleep study on me. Like last night, and it actually is red because it tells me that I'm overtired, but I'm not. I'm just such a good sleeper. My latency was 2 minutes. My,
I love that. I know
my
I
poor
hit the
husband.
pillow. I'm the same. I feel like I got dinged points because I fell asleep quickly. That's
Yeah,
not fair.
exactly. Oh,
Oh
Lori,
gosh.
I could talk to you for 5 more hours. Really
Thank
could. And
you.
actually, I think I would love to have you back on the show.
Let's
And
do it.
if that's a possibility. I've learned so much from you, but I would love for my audience to learn where to find you. If you don't mind sharing in what ways and areas that they can, if they didn't watch the YouTube video, then go see your beautiful face, and then where they can just learn more from you.
Thank you. I love sharing that. So, my business is called Fast Forward Wellness. It's fastforwardwellness.com. And you can go there and download a free guide on how to start intermittent fasting and some of the benefits. And then once you start, feel free to write me and let me know how you're doing. I love hearing from people on my website. And I coach people through group classes and one on one individual coaching. And it's just the joy of my life. I mean, that this has turned into how I get to spend my time having people feel better and live longer. I mean, my goodness, what a gift.
So rewarding. I totally agree
Yeah.
with that. And one of the things that I would love to talk about next time is, being the Zoom pioneer that you are and how you do coach people. Because, today's day and age, being able to remotely work with people in whatever business you do is just been wonderful. And I'm sure people would love to hear how you did that. So that will be one of the topics.
That would be really fun.
Your
Yeah, when I
business.
first started, I used to have to teach everyone how to use Zoom.
Now
Oh,
a
the olden
two-year-old.
days.
Yes, yes.
Back in the olden days. Oh gosh, when we had got together for a class. So yeah,
Yeah,
I coach
absolutely.
people in Japan and New Zealand and England and everywhere.
Incredible.
Yeah.
How
Thank you
fun.
for having me. That
You're
was a
so welcome. You're so welcome. And you guys, hasn't she been a joy? And hold me to it, having her back, and we'll just pick her brain a little bit more. But as I always say, MADE also stands for Make a Difference Every Day. I want you to wake up every morning with preparedness, and I want you to go to bed putting your head on your pillow, feeling proud. So have a great day, and we will see you next time. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.